fulfilled. All that he has said was being fulfilled. It is said that in Romans it says, wherefore there is by one man sin entered the world, and the death of sin. And so death passeth unto all men, for that all have sinned. We have to go back to the Garden of Eden to fully understand the significance of the death of Jesus. God made a beautiful garden and placed man in the garden. Man had only the responsibilities to care for the garden. He was not forbidden to eat of any tree except the one in the midst of the garden, the tree of knowledge. Man disobeyed God, and God ejected him from the garden. But before he ejected him, he gave him a promise. He said that there would be a chance of salvation. The Lord told him, he says, if you just hold on, there's going to be one coming. It's going to be the seed of a woman. And she's going to have this child, and this child is going to save you. And when you look and understand that Isaiah makes it plain that a woman does not have seed, and so it had to be an immaculate conception. Isaiah says that, therefore the Lord himself shall give us a sign. A virgin shall be with child, and she shall bring this child forth. I'm here to tell you that it was an awesome day on Calvary. It was an awesome day. But before God ejected Adam, he gave him something. He instituted the ceremonial service of sacrifice. We find that he killed an animal and wrapped him in his skins and put him out of the garden. Man now had to face a hostile environment. Man now has to fend for himself. So God instituted the ceremonies of sacrifice. He made the first sacrifice to himself on the behalf of man. And now we look at what else took place on Calvary. Messiah has come, and they are still under affliction. The Romans had the children of Israel, the nation of Israel, under condemnation. They had them under their control. But every now and then God would give them a sign of hope. He says that he was called Shiloh in Genesis 49. He says that he will have afflictions until Shiloh comes. It means that the Messiah would come and would liberate them. And they were looking for a liberator, like a military overthrow of the Roman government. But not so. The liberator that came was one that God had chosen from the beginning of time. When he decided that man was going to sin and give him the hope and the deliverance from his sin. When we look at it in Deuteronomy, he was called a prophet. In Isaiah, he was called a divine servant. In Jeremiah, he was a righteous branch. In Daniel, he was the Messiah, the prince. In Malachi, he was born in Bethlehem. In Zechariah, the servant, the branch of the temple builder. It is finished. John 19:30 says, it is finished. Tetelestai, it is finished. Nothing else to be done. It is paid for in full. The perfect sacrifice is being made. He has to drink the foul drink of that cup that he was talking about in the Garden of Gethsemane. That cup where his enemies would be having control of his body. That enemy that had betrayed him, that Judas, that servant that would deny him. All of this was taking place in that cup. But I'm going to tell you, he drank every drop of that drink that was in that cup. Oh, he drank that cup. And then it says that everybody was angry with him. They wanted to get rid of him. John says that was the only one that remained with him. The winemakers were mad with him because he was putting them out of business, turning water into wine. The bakers were mad because he was taking just a few loaves and feeding 9,000 men beside the women and children. The fishermen were mad because he could take just a handful of fish and feed 9,000 men beside the women and children. The doctors were mad. The orthopedist was mad because he was straightening the limbs of those who could not walk. The ophthalmologist was mad because he was opening the eyes of the blind.
Come on, Pastor.
The hematologist was mad because he was healing people with blood diseases. The dermatologist was mad because he was casting out the leprosy from the body. Everybody was mad at him. The council was mad at him. The high priest was mad at him. Oh, everybody was upset with him. The undertakers were upset because he was raising people in the form of the bleeding ram. Moses preached him when he raised a brazen serpent in the wilderness. Oh, the word of Jesus proclaimed the close of his state of humiliation. His earthly life had began in loneliness and misunderstood, was ended. The suffering his soul endured is contracted with sin, unbelief, his rejection by the Jews, the weakness of the disciples' faith, the dark deeds of Judas, Gethsemane, and the cross were now past. Moses and the prophets take the position of witnesses to Christ. The educational regime of the law was no longer necessary, and it was served its purpose of bringing home to man's heart the consciousness of sin. Oh, let me tell you something. Sacrifice was now shown to be typical of his supreme sacrifice, and prophetic utterances ceased, which pointed to a coming deliverance by a heaven-sent Redeemer. There was no further need for the annual atonement. Yom Kippur was not needed anymore. The veil in the temple separating the holy place from the Holy of Holies was not needed anymore. Oh, the sprinkling of the blood on the holy seat was not needed anymore. All that had been done in the ceremonial law only pointed to his coming. It was now finished. Everything can be exposed now because it is over. Can't you hear him declaring it is finished? No one has spoken for him. He said of his own works, it is finished. He was able to say what no other man could say, referencing to salvation. It is finished. Adam lived 930 years, but he could not say it's finished. All the days of Enoch were 365 years, and he walked with God. He didn't even taste death, for he was translated, but he could not say it was finished. Oh, Noah lived 969 years, survived the onslaught of the flood, but he could not say it was finished. And Abraham was called God's friend. He did everything that he needed to do as a patriarch, but he could not say it was finished. Isaac lived 180 years, and he was a child of promise, but he could not say it's finished. Jacob was born in answer to his father's prayer, but he could not say it's finished. Joseph was a prototype of Christ. Everybody knows that he walked just like Christ did. He delivered his people at a time of crisis, but he could not say it was finished. They carried his body in the wilderness for 40 long years, but he could not say it was finished. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died in Moab after 120 years, after looking at the promised land, after making the sacrifice of leading God's people for 40 long years, meeting their needs and praying intercessory prayers for them, he could not say it's finished. David was a man after God's own heart. But he could not say it was finished. Elijah, God dispatched a whirlwind and a chariot and horses of fire to bring him home, but he could not say it's finished. Only God could declare tetelestai, paid in full. Only God could say it's finished. It's paid in full. What was paid? The price of redemption. What was accomplished? The work which the Father had given him to do. What else was done? The plan of salvation was completed. The total atonement for our transgressions was paid. All of the Messianic promises from Moses to John the Baptist had been fulfilled. Everything is going well. The law had been fulfilled. Our reconciliation had been fulfilled. The scapegoats now can live on. The Paschal Lamb can live on. The ransom was paid.